Welcome back to the deep dive. Whenever we talk about the future of Ukraine, specifically the economic recovery, there's this very specific, very shiny image that tends to dominate the conversation for you and me.
Well, totally. The marketing brochure version.
Right. We hear the word Reconstruction, and immediately your mind jumps to a sort of Marshall Plan 2.0. We picture high-tech factories, glass skyscrapers, smart cities, and just a booming job market for engineers.
Yeah, it's a vision of a phoenix rising from the ashes, and it's all funded by benevolent international partners.
Which is a beautiful image.
It is, and honestly, it's a necessary one for morale. But today, we're going to do something a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, we are.
We are going to step away from the political speeches, and we are going to look at the actual paperwork that is being signed behind closed doors.
Right, because we have a stack of documents here for this deep dive that paint a picture that is, well, let's just say it heavily contradicts that glossy brochure.
Yeah.
We're basing today's discussion on a rigorous legal and economic analysis by Dr. Viacheslav Morgun.
And it is really important to understand who we are listening to here. Dr. Morgun isn't some guy with a conspiracy blog. He has a PhD in law and is a recognized expert in municipal law and economy.
He actually reads these government resolutions with a lawyer's eye and an economist's calculator.
Exactly, and his thesis is pretty stark. He argues that if you look at the official documents, specifically Government Resolution now 2202, we aren't paving the way for a high-tech industrial boom.
No, we are legally structuring the country to become a raw material colony.
That is the exact phrase that jumps off the page, raw material colony. It implies an economy that exists solely to be dug up and shipped out.
So today we're going to unpack exactly why he says that. We're going to look at the creation of this new entity, the American-Ukrainian Investment Fund for Reconstruction, or AURF.
We need to figure out where your tax money is actually going, who truly controls Ukraine's strategic resources, and then look at the alternative model Dr. Morgun proposes for true economic sovereignty.
And I think the best place to start isn't in Washington or Kyiv, but right in the local communities. Because Dr. Morgun highlights a massive financial paradox happening right now.
He does. Let's set the scene for the listener. For years, the big buzzword in Ukraine was decentralization.
Right.
The idea was to give local communities, the Ramadas, more power and more budget so they could fix their own schools and roads.
Make them self-sufficient. So where does that stand today, according to the paper?
According to Dr. Morgun's analysis, that trend has been violently reversed. If you look at the recent tax code changes, the central government has removed 64% of the personal income tax, the PIT, from local budgets.
Wow.
On top of that, they've seized 100% of the military PIT. That's the tax revenue generated from military salaries, which, frankly, was keeping a lot of these smaller communities afloat.
I mean, I can hear the counterargument already, though. The country is at war. Isn't it just logical for the central government to consolidate all the cash? Everything for the front, right?
That is the official narrative, yes. But Dr. Morgun points out they didn't just take the military tax, they also removed something called reverse subsidies.
Okay, reverse subsidies. That sounds like accountant jargon. What does that actually mean for a regular town?
So in a healthy, decentralized system, wealthy communities, maybe a town with a big factory or a port, generate a surplus. The state usually takes a bit of that surplus to help poorer communities.
That makes sense.
Right. But by removing this mechanism entirely, the state has effectively frozen the development funds of even the highly capable communities.
So the end result is that these local mayors are essentially broke.
Completely broke. Dr. Morgun paints a picture where local leaders can't afford to repair heating systems for the winter, they can't build bomb shelters for the schools, and they definitely can't fix roads. The message from the top is clear. There is no money, total austerity.
Okay, so we have extreme austerity at the local level. But you mentioned a paradox earlier. If there's no money, there's no money.
The paradox is that while the local communities are being told there isn't a single hryvnia to spare, the state budget somehow managed to find 1.9 billion hryvnias.
Wait, 1.9 billion. That is not a small rounding error.
No, it's not. And this is live money, a real cash transfer straight from the budget.
And where does it go? Did it go to the army? Did it go to build those school shelters?
No. It went into the charter capital of this new American-Ukrainian investment fund.
Like UIF.
Yes. And here is the really critical detail that Dr. Morgun flags for us. That fund is not a Ukrainian state enterprise. It is a legal entity registered in Delaware, USA.
Delaware. As in the U.S. state famous for corporate secrecy and tax advantages.
The very same. So just connect the dots here. You strip the local budgets of the funds needed for boiler houses and shelters, claiming absolute poverty.
Yeah.
Then you take almost $2 billion in taxpayer cash and wire it to an offshore jurisdiction to capitalize a fund that the Ukrainian public has absolutely no oversight over.
That certainly complicates the "we have no money" narrative. It sounds a lot more like "we have no money for you."
Precisely.
But let's look at the American part of this fund. If it's a joint venture, surely the American partners are putting in money too, right? Maybe the $1.9 billion is just our buy-in for a much larger pot of gold.
That is what you would naturally hope. But Dr. Morgan suggests we literally read the documents with a calculator. The analysis points to a massive asymmetry.
How so?
Well, Ukraine is contributing live money, cash. The U.S. side's contribution, however, appears to be structured very differently. It may not be new cash at all, but rather accounting write-offs for military aid that has already been provided or pledged.
Hold on a second. Military aid is usually government-to-government support. It's political support. How does that suddenly become equity in a private investment fund?
It's a mechanism of converting aid into ownership. And Dr. Morgan uses a very vivid, almost painful analogy to explain how this feels from a pure sovereignty perspective.
I want to hear it.
He says, imagine your house is on fire. A neighbor comes over, helps you put it out with his hose and his water. He talks about brotherhood, solidarity, saving the neighborhood.
And you're incredibly grateful.
Of course you are. But the next morning, that same neighbor shows up with a contract demanding half your land as payment for the water he used.
Wow. That is brutal. It implies that what was framed publicly as support is being retroactively converted into a commercial transaction.
Exactly. It completely shifts the relationship from a partnership of allies to a business deal where Ukraine is paying with its future assets.
And when we talk about assets in this context, we aren't just talking about money in a bank account. We are talking about the literal periodic table.
Right, because a fund like this needs to invest in something.
And what is the target?
The target is strategic raw materials. We're talking about lithium, titanium, uranium, and graphite.
Lithium is obviously the big one. They call it the white gold of the 21st century. You can't have an energy transition or electric vehicles without it.
Correct. And Ukraine happens to have some of the largest deposits in all of Europe. Now, according to Dr. Morgan's analysis of the resolution, this Delaware fund is being positioned to have monopoly rights to extract these resources.
Okay.
And the terms are, well, they are incredibly generous to the fund.
Generous in what way? Let's get into the numbers.
There is a clause entitling the fund to 50% of the profits from these deposits in perpetuity.
Forever.
Forever.
Okay, playing devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah.
If they are bringing the high-tech equipment to dig it up, isn't a 50-50 split pretty standard business?
In a total vacuum, maybe. But Dr. Morgan says you have to look at how profit is calculated versus the actual tax reality in Ukraine right now.
Okay, break that down for me.
He notes that the rent rates, that's the tax you pay to the state for the right to dig the stuff out of the ground, are incredibly low in Ukraine. For strategic metals, it's often around 5 to 6.25% of the cost of extraction, not the market value of the metal, the cost to extract it.
Oh, so if I'm the mining company, I can claim my operational costs are really high, pay a tiny tax based on that cost to the state, and then keep the vast majority of the actual revenue.
Exactly. The state gets absolute pennies in tax. Then, whatever profit is left after some very creative accounting is split with the Delaware entity.
Which means the Ukrainian people, who constitutionally own the resources, are effectively giving them away for free.
Yes. But believe it or not, the most anti-competitive part isn't even the profit split. It's the monopoly mechanism called the right of first refusal.
How does that work in this agreement?
Let's say a major global technology company like a Siemens or a Samsung wants to come to Ukraine directly. They want to open a lithium mine and build a massive battery factory right there in the region.
That's the dream, right? High-paying job.
Exactly. But under this agreement, they cannot just apply to the government for a license. They have to bring their entire project to the fund first.
Wait, they have to ask the Delaware Fund for permission to invest in Ukraine?
Essentially, yes. The fund has the right to look at the project and say, thanks, we'll take that, and literally take over the opportunity. Or they can decline it.
So why would any outside investor even bother showing up? If I'm a global company, I'm not going to spend $10 million doing due diligence just to have my project stolen by the right of first refusal holder.
You wouldn't. And that is the exact point Dr. Morgan is making. It scares away all outside competition. It ensures that this specific Delaware entity is the sole gatekeeper for the entire sector. It creates a massive bottleneck that completely stifles a free market.
This sounds like we are handing over the keys to the entire economy. But who is driving the car? Who actually runs this Delaware fund? Is it a board of directors with Ukrainian representatives?
This brings us to what Dr. Morgan calls the Delaware trap. The legal structure is a limited partnership. In this corporate structure, you have two very distinct roles, the general partner and the limited partner.
And I'm guessing Ukraine, the one putting in the $1.9 billion in cash, is the limited partner.
Correct. And under Delaware law, the limited partner is essentially just a silent wallet.
The silent wallet.
Yeah. Ukraine provides the capital but has zero voting rights regarding daily operations, strategy, or personnel.
Zero. So we give the money, we give the exclusive access to the lithium, and we have absolutely no say in how any of it is managed.
None. Dr. Morgan describes the general partner's power as monarchical. The U.S. company decides who gets the licenses, who manages the assets, and who the contractors are.
But surely if the general partner does something totally reckless, like selling the lithium to a third party for dirt cheap, Ukraine can step in and sue. Or fire them.
It's extremely difficult. And here's the true legal trap. If a limited partner tries to intervene in management, they lose their limited liability status.
Oh, wow.
So the law actually legally disincentivizes Ukraine from trying to take control or fix things. It's a complete black box.
What about external oversight? Can the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, the NABU, or the Accounting Chamber of Ukraine audit this fund?
No. That is the beauty of the offshore registration. The fund operates completely outside Ukrainian jurisdiction, and it is tax-exempt in Ukraine. As far as Ukrainian regulators are concerned, it's a ghost.
This seems to go way beyond just bad business. This touches on the fundamental concept of who runs the country.
It absolutely touches on sovereignty. Dr. Morgan specifically references Article 13 of the Ukrainian Constitution, which states that the bowels of the earth, the natural resources, belong to the people.
Right, that's a foundational law.
But the agreement for this fund contains a stabilization clause. Now, usually, stabilization clauses are just used to protect investors from sudden, unfair tax hikes.
Standard practice to give them some peace of mind.
Sure, but here, Dr. Morgan argues it is being interpreted very aggressively. It effectively says that if Ukrainian laws change in the future, let's say the parliament passes stricter environmental laws or actually raises the rent on mining, this agreement overrides the new laws.
So the fund operates in a time capsule. The laws of 2024 apply to them forever, regardless of what the Ukrainian people actually vote for in 2030 or 2040.
Exactly. Dr. Morgan argues this creates a state within a state. The government is voluntarily creating an economic enclave where the evolving will of the Ukrainian people just does not apply.
That's wild.
He argues this violates Article 5 regarding national sovereignty and Article 19, which mandates that officials must act within the law. You cannot sign a private contract that literally cancels the Constitution.
That sounds like a constitutional crisis just waiting to happen. But I also saw a note in Dr. Morgan's analysis about the MFN trap the most favored nation clause. That sounds like international trade jargon, but why is it so dangerous here?
It is a massive hidden risk. Ukraine is a member of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. One of the core rules of the WTO is most favored nation. It means you generally cannot discriminate between trading partners.
Okay, so if you give a special preference to one country, you have to offer to everyone else.
Exactly. So if we grant this Delaware fund a 0% tax rate and all these special legal exemptions, investors from the EU or China can go straight to international arbitration.
Oh, I see where this is going.
They can say, hey, you gave the Americans zero tax. Under WTO rules, you are legally required to give it to us too.
So we open ourselves up to billions in international lawsuits.
Yep. Either we pay billions in compensation, or we are forced to drop taxes to zero for everyone, which would effectively destroy the national budget. It's a lose-lose scenario triggered just by trying to give a special deal to one partner.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second. If this plan goes through exactly as written, the monopoly, the offshore control, the raw material extraction, what does the future actually look like? What is the bad ending Dr. Morgan is warning us about?
Dr. Morgan describes the extractive economy nightmare. In this scenario, the fund has absolutely no incentive to build expensive factories in Ukraine.
Because factories are hard?
They are hard. They require training, deep infrastructure, and long-term commitment. The quick, easy money is in digging up the ore and throwing it on a train.
So we literally just become a quarry.
Yes. We export raw lithium ore, which is cheap. The processing making the batteries, the electric vehicles, all happens elsewhere. That means all the high-paying engineering jobs happen elsewhere. Ukraine is left with low-wage jobs for the extraction crews.
And that inevitably leads to brain drain. If you're a bright young engineer in Kyiv, there's no industry for you here.
Precisely. It degrades the whole educational system because the economy simply doesn't demand high skills anymore. And then there's the environmental impact. Dr. Morgan uses the term moon landscape.
Like strip mining.
Open pit mining is an incredibly dirty business. Without strict environmental oversight, which, remember, the stabilization clause helps them completely avoid, you get poisoned groundwater, toxic dust, and destroyed agricultural land.
So the local communities get the health costs and the poisoned water while the profits go straight to Delaware.
That is the fear.
That is a very bleak picture. I mean, it is the textbook definition of colonization. But Dr. Morgan didn't just write this analysis to depress us, right? He proposes a structural alternative.
He does. And this is where the conversation actually pivots to solutions. Dr. Morgan argues that the situation isn't hopeless at all, but it requires a total rethink of how we view the state. He introduces the concept of the single legal entity of public law, or SLEPL.
Okay, SLEPL. That is a massive mouthful of legalese. Can we break that down into plain English for the listener?
Yeah, think of it as Ukraine, Inc., or the Community, Inc. It means treating the state and the local communities not just as bloated bureaucratic offices, but as full-fledged public corporations where the citizens themselves are the shareholders.
So as a citizen, I am a literal shareholder in my city.
Effectively, yes. But unlike a private corporation like Apple or Tesla, where the goal is maximizing cash profit for stock dividends, the mandate of the public corporation is maximizing quality of life.
Okay, so the dividends aren't cash payments to me. The dividends are clean water, paved roads, and modern schools.
Exactly.
That sounds really nice conceptually, but how does it change the hard negotiation with a foreign investor? How does it actually stop the lithium from being stolen?
It fundamentally changes the power dynamic. Right now, we act like a beggar asking for charity. Please invest in us. In the SLEPL model, the state acts as a strong commercial subject. It says, look, we own this asset. This lithium is ours. If you want it, you play by our rules.
So instead of please invest, it's here is the price of entry.
Exactly. You want the lithium. You build the battery plant right here. You employ our engineers here. You pay full taxes here. It's hard bargaining.
But that requires a lot of political will. And it requires officials who aren't, well, let's say, easily swayed by outside pressure.
Dr. Morgan addresses that directly. In this model, ministers and mayors are viewed as hired managers with a strict fiduciary duty.
Fiduciary duty, that's a corporate law term. It basically means you are legally required to act in the best financial interest of the client.
Right. If a corporate CEO gives away company assets for free to a buddy, they get sued, or they go to jail for breach of duty. Dr. Morgan argues we need to apply that exact same standard to government officials.
That makes total sense.
If they sign a deal that gives away national resources for 5% rent, they aren't just making a political mistake. They are actively breaching their fiduciary duty to the shareholders, which is the people.
That is a very powerful shift in thinking. It moves it from politics to accountability. It means you can actually be held personally liable for a terrible deal.
It's all about economic maturity. Dr. Morgan emphasizes, and I think this is really important for us to highlight, this isn't about being anti-American or anti-Western in any way. It is purely about being pro-Ukraine.
Right.
True partnership is between equals. Dependency is not partnership. If we want to be part of the Western world, we need to act like a sovereign player, not a resource depot for someone else's supply chain.
It's so easy to feel like we should just be eternally grateful for any attention or money that comes our way, especially right now with everything going on. But Dr. Morgan's entire argument is that we are bringing massive, tangible value to the table. Value that the world desperately needs for the future, and we should value ourselves accordingly.
And we really have to remember the permanence of this decision. Lithium and titanium are finite resources. Once they are dug up and shipped away, they are gone forever.
You can't put them back.
No. We get exactly one shot to convert this natural wealth into human capital and lasting infrastructure. If we just trade it away for a quick cash infusion into a budget black hole, we have completely failed the next generation.
It really forces you to totally rethink the basic definition of ownership.
That's the exact thought I want to leave listeners with today. We constantly say the resources belong to the people. That's the slogan. But if the laws don't apply to the company digging them up, if the taxes are minimized to pennies, and if the profits flow straight to an offshore account in Delaware, does the owner actually own anything at all?
Or are we just residents living on someone else's construction site?
Exactly.
That is a haunting question, but a really essential one. Dr. Morgan's work proves that the real answers always lie in the fine print. We can't just read the political slogans. We have to read the contracts.
Absolutely. The documents are all there for anyone to see. We just need the courage to read them with a calculator.
Well said. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. It's heavy, complex stuff, but it matters more than almost anything else being discussed right now.
Thank you for having me.